Thabani, you are in an arena, so you are constantly engaged, with people who are struggling with communication. And this is one of the things that have come out, that people are struggling because of what they harbor inside about themselves. What are some of the things that you think they should be doing to realign their thought processes to their reality and to the fact that they can communicate? What does it look like? What's the inner work? What does it look like? If someone says, I'm prepared to do the inner work, I am prepared to see myself anew, for those who are struggling with self-image. How do they begin to invest in that kind of work?
And I love the fact that you say see yourself anew, because that's what it becomes. When I take people through the course, I find that the biggest transformation is not necessarily the essence of who they are. Yes, people change. Yes, they undergo transformation, but the transformation is less about I've changed ingredients inside of myself. The biggest transformation is I see myself differently now, from a different vantage point. And as a result, I approach things differently. So for instance, one of the first mindset shifts that I encourage people to go over is embracing discomfort. Realizing that it's uncomfortable to communicate. And and putting yourself out there. Brené Brown speaks about 3 factors. She says, when there is emotional exposure, when there is uncertainty, and when there's risk, we're bound to feel more vulnerable. And that's what happens when you're speaking in public. There's the emotional exposure in that I'm facing a bunch of people who are looking at me however it is that they're looking at me, and I'm about to share ideas that I either resonate with, that I love, that I hold near and dear. So there's a risk of criticism. There's a risk of being cancelled. There's a risk of saying something stupid. There's a risk of offending. And as a result, it causes a significant amount of uncertainty in how this is going to go, how they're going to perceive me, how they're going to interact with me after they've heard me speak. So all of those elements are at play. And as a result, feeling nervous is reasonable. But because in people's minds, they're like, I shouldn't be feeling nervous. I practiced here. Now they've got a should. I shouldn't be feeling nervous. And so if I'm feeling nervous, there must be something wrong with me. A reframe that people then undergo is the nerves are fine. They'll always be there. They're not going to leave. So the nerves are okay. The minute they see the exact version of themselves in a different light, that a nervous me doesn't mean wrong. A nervous me just means I care for this thing and I've got something vested in it. I've got a vested interest in it going well. It actually showcases how much I care. So being nervous is fine. So as a result, they're seeing themselves differently or from a different vantage point. The other thing that is a key mindset that I encourage individuals to go over is realizing that when you're speaking, this thing is happening through you. It's not about you. And in all contexts, you're contributing in a meeting. It's about the contribution, not you. You're sharing an agenda. You're sharing content. It's about the content. It's not you. Me sitting here today, it's not about me. It's about the content I'm here to share and the value that I'm here to bring. It's not about me. It's happening through me. So the more you can orient yourself as a vessel through which this thing happens, then the quicker you're able to get out of your own way and the less you're able to make it about yourself. So that reframe and realizing that, oh, it's not about me. It's happening through me, then empowers individuals. Now back to the inner work that needs to happen.
If I happen to offend you, it was not me, it was happening through me.
Engage with the offensive thing, not me. Don't make it personal. I've actually never thought of that vantage point. But it's always happening through you, right? And the inner work, I think, starts there, Sis Noxy, because we get in our own way. Especially when we get nervous, anxious. When our body gets into fight, flight, freeze, it then goes into the storehouse of data that has been previously accumulated in the past. So the oral that you delivered in class that they laughed at you for, the one time you made a mistake and you got laughed at, the one time you were sitting at the dinner table and you tried to say something and no one listened because everyone else was loud, the one time you said something at a dinner table and everyone looked at each other and they were like, okay. So you use all of that data to sharpen that moment. And that internal work for me, what it looks like and what I always guide individuals to do is externalize those internal thoughts. Because anything that's sitting as a thought and as a feeling is too gray, and maybe this is an engineer in me, is too gray for you to decipher. So externalize it. And you can externalize it verbally.
Yep.
Or you can externalize it on paper. Or you can send yourself a voice note. One of the biggest or one of the most game-changing exercises that I ask individuals to do in this realm is to list each and every one of your insecurities existing and from the past. Things that you've been targeted about, things that you're scared about, things you're scared to put out in public, and the things that you're most scared of.
Yeah.
So for instance, when I was listing mine, the list was there. I listed my nose. I listed the tone of my skin. I listed the hair at the back of my head and how little it is. And the ones that I've just listed now are not current insecurities, but they're things that I was previously insecure about and things that I was teased and targeted about by kids, and kids are really mean. And I'll put that out. Right, current insecurities or spaces where I feel I revert back to when I'm triggered. I'm not smart enough. That's a narrative that's constantly running in my head. Not smart enough. My brain doesn't recall information quick enough. I don't answer quick enough. It's all about memory and the pace of my memory. And as a result, that means I'm not smart enough. I'm not good with math, not good with approximation. I'm not good with, so I listed all of those things.
Yeah.
And then against each and every one of them, I rated each of them from 0 to 10 on what I call a sensitivity scale, which is to answer the question, how sensitive am I about this thing? So the hair at the back of my head, my nose, my lisp, 1, 2, not sensitive about it. You can tease me about it. It's probably not going to affect me. But smart enough, 9, 8. Now I know, Sis Nox, that in a conversation that I have, when I'm speaking in public, when I'm communicating, if someone even slightly insinuates that they're attacking my intellect, I'm going to feel significantly more aggravated. I'm going to feel significantly more triggered. And as a result, I won't act based on the information that I'm given. I'm going to use previous data. So because I've got visibility of that, if you say in this conversation, I don't know, Thabani, if that's factual. I don't know if that's accurate.
There's a new terminology. People say they are doubting your intellectual credibility.
You see? So if you doubt my intellectual credibility, and that's exactly what it is. If you doubt my intellectual credibility, I know that I'm going to get very defensive. I know that I'm going to get triggered. But because I have visibility of that, the minute you say that I'm going to feel all of the feelings, then I'm going to say, oh, no. Then I'm going to stay curious that moment. Is she genuinely doubting my intellectual credibility? So if you say, Thabani, I don't know if that's factual, then I'm going to say, okay, maybe you've got a perspective that I don't have. Please share. Or where's the gap? Or what am I not understanding? So the staying curious, and what I'll always do in those moments, I'll ask a question. So the more questions I ask, you're probably triggering a lot in me. So I'll ask a question, and that's for me to intentionally stay curious. What does this mean? Is Noxy saying what I think she's saying? Confirmation. And if you are, I find that it's seldom about the person that's saying it. And it's always about the relationship I have to that thing. So in that moment, I'll take the L. I'll be like, oh, thanks for correcting me. I wasn't aware. I thought it was this, but you've then rightly corrected me. This is what it actually is. And then I move on. And then after the conversation, I know to go unpack that with me. What about what was said in that moment caused this? What do I do in future to not be in that situation again? So the minute you get visibility of some of those insecurities, and I think for me, insecurities, there's several places that we get insecurities. Some of them were imagined. Some of them, they've actually been said to us. People have said things that have made us feel a certain way. And the big reframe there is, I'm not that person forever. I'm not that person forever. Yes, at some point, maybe I was that person. Yes, at some moment in time, maybe I showed up in that way. Maybe that was true on that day. Maybe that was true in that season. Hell, maybe that's true today.
Yeah.
But I don't have to be that person forever. I can reframe and I can change. What does changing that look like? And having visibility and creating practical steps to take care of it. So for instance, with my nose, I'm not going to change my nose. It's too expensive to change noses. And I think the best strategy is just to accept I'm fine with this nose. I'm not going to get hair transplants. Rather, just cut a fade and leave that spot bald, right? So there are practical steps that I can take to get over certain things. And if those steps are inaccessible to me, maybe it's locked in a childhood trauma, then I would advise that people seek external counsel from experts and people with experience.
It's really awesome. Just a quick one. What responsibility do leaders have to portray themselves in an authentic way that allows other people to do the same? Just an example. Why is it so hard for leaders to say, today was not a good day for me? Instead, they want to hide it and only show their good days. And as a result, the people that are looking up to them and looking to them always think you must always have the best days. You should always be in your best behavior. You should always excel. Do you think we have a responsibility to also show the other side, to say it's not about perfection, it's about engagement? Because when you are constantly engaged, you grow, you embrace the good and the bad, but you don't allow it to define you.
And that the responsibility for leaders is so much higher in this regard, because the mere fact that you're a leader means that there's a tone that you're setting, and also you also serve as this is what we do here, ambassador. And if all you're sharing are the positive things, all you're purporting is this infallible, unbreakable caricature, don't be surprised when your individuals do the same. Don't be surprised when they act like everything is okay when it's actually not, because that's what you're mirroring. And I think there also is like we've gotten to a place where people can sense that level of, it's not, I don't even say it's pretense, but people can sense when there's a bit of masking. And I think there have been sufficient conversations around some of these things that we know that everybody struggles. We know that. And if from you, all I'm getting is smiles and jolliness and strength and infallibility, let me actually catch myself there. It's actually not strength, because strength is both in the standing up and also being able to say I'm down, because there's strength in that as well. So it's not strength, scrap that word, not strength, but showing this unbreakable, always upright, always positive, always unshaken version of yourself. People sense that something's being hidden there. And they're not quite sure what is being hidden, but what they do derive is that we must hide this kind of thing. And more, I'm starting to see the parallels between leadership, parenthood, and also servanthood, insofar as setting a particular tone. I mean, if you watch children and how they develop, it's evident that they're constantly observing, what do we do here? What is acceptable here? What is unacceptable here? And they'll mirror that. They'll take that on. They'll make that theirs. And as a leader, you have the responsibility to set that tone within the bounds of your jurisdiction. And even if you're not a positional leader, because I think most leaders are non-positional leaders, people still get that tone from you. So they might be a positional leader that's been placed, and that positional leader might be showing all of the things that they need to show. They're showing the vulnerability. And if you, as a non-positional leader, then show up and say, we don't do that, we don't, or you criticize that approach, or you criticize, you're also influencing people in a certain way. So the minute leaders acknowledge the responsibility that they have, insofar as setting the tone as this is what we do here, which also becomes restrictive to them. I can't imagine a space that is safe and restrictive of certain emotions being expressed. That's not a safe enough space. It's not safe if I don't feel like I can express certain things. It's not safe if I feel like I need to be monotone. It's not safe if I feel like I need to only show up in a particular way and only in a particular way or show a particular side of who I am.
I've been privy to listen to some of your coaching sessions. Well, one, there was one. But what I don't want to say grappled with, but what I observed was that a lot of people were coming out saying, every time I speak in English, I freeze. And I think the case you were making is there's communication and building a competence around communication, but also languages require a certain proficiency and competence that you have to build around language, and then you marry the two. Right? So what are some of the themes that have been consistent that you think people are really challenged in understanding why their failure for, to communicate proficiently and you have built that competence? What are some of the challenges that have been more prevalent in the people that you are coaching? What are some of the things that you think people can just generally do as a sort of a cheat sheet? To wing it and do it very well when they're doing the inner work, but work is happening and they're able to hold a conversation. They're able to, pitch to investors. They're able to, find their way around job interviews and communicate in a family setup. What are some of those things that you think this is the struggle? People are mostly struggling with this, but these are some of the things that they can do to overcome these challenges while they're busy do the inner work, because that work is very important.
100%. With English always comes with other limiting beliefs. And I say in my mind, this is the cousin of English. And you'll typically find that English is actually the cousin of that limiting belief. So with people who say that they'll struggle with English, it's typically how they view their English. Cousin of English is also accent. So when people say, Thabani, I hate my English, it's less about I hate my competence. I hate how my English sounds. And I've ascertained this by understanding. So whenever someone says, I struggle with English, the first thing you want to do is to find someone whose English you like. Then the first comparison you want to make is the accent comparison. And you'll typically find that, okay, I'm not just insecure about the English language, I'm insecure about how my accent sounds. I'm going to say then delegate that to internal work. And what that internal work looks like is who taught you English? What is this perceived standard of English that you feel like you should be speaking? Why is it important that you speak in that way? And what about the way those people speak makes you feel like you should speak in that way? So an example, if someone listens, let's put two accents together again. Someone listens to a particular accent and they say, you just speak with so much confidence when you speak your English. It's almost like when you speak English, you just have authority. And I'm like, okay, what you're looking for is not the English. You're looking for authority. You're looking for assertiveness, and you're looking for that authoritative. And what that looks like is raise your volume. Speak slower. Take your time. Think about things. Because someone who speaks from an authoritative perspective takes time to think. They contemplate. They're not frantic. They don't jump. They don't. They actually sit and they think, and then they share their thoughts. So those are the skills you're looking for, and it's not the English. Or I want to be able to voice out more of my opinions. And people think that when they've got the English to voice out those opinions, they will be able to. But what's underlying that is Thabani, I'm agreeable, or I'm not assertive, or I'm insecure in the quality of my thoughts. And then a practical thing you can do there is improve the quality of your thoughts by thinking more. Like, literally take time, schedule 30 minutes in your schedule to say, all I'm going to do here is to think. And if you struggle to think about something specific, think about a specific idea. You can even Google or chat GPT this. Give me an idea that I can think about for 30 minutes. And then think about that idea, the positives, the negatives, the upsides, the downsides, what someone who doesn't have your life experience would say, what someone who's rich would say, what someone who's childlike would say, what Pinocchio would say about it, what Gandalf would say about it. Like, just try and think of different characters and what they'll think about that particular topic. And then you then improve your quality of your thinking by doing that. So I typically find that English is like it's a cousin of something. But if English is not a cousin for you, this is what you can do. One, my favorite tip is to listen to podcasts, debates, and lectures. And the reason why you want to do this is because you listen and you hear the English language in use and in context. So if you were to read the dictionary, for instance, you're hearing that, okay, this is what perplexed means, but you don't quite know how to use perplexed. And then the task of then taking the word and then going to Google and say, how is this used in a sentence? You're going to have to imagine a scenario. But if you're watching the English language in use, you then increase insofar as knowing what certain words mean and knowing how to use it. And I particularly say podcasts, debates, and lectures because there's a dialogue that's happening and people are discussing ideas. And most of the podcasts, okay, maybe I'm making a wild assumption here. The podcasts I listen to talk about like quite complex ideas and quite unique ideas and specific ideas. So if you can find a podcast for work purposes that's related to your field, then great. Find that it's going to give you the languaging to vocalize some of your thoughts. If you can find debates that are in your field, then even better. If you can find lectures about the content in your field, then that's going to give you the language to articulate some of your thoughts. So that helps you improve English. And then there's something called Word of the Day. You can Google Word of the Day and some word will pop up. Take 2 of those a week and use that word at least 10 times a day. So let's say the word of the day is perplexed. I'm going to find 10 opportunities in my day to use the word perplexed for 3 of the 6 days, for the 3 of the 7 days in a week. Then the other 3, I do another word. Now compound that. If you're learning 2 words a week, in a month, you would have learned 8.
Yep.
And in a year, you can just think about how your vocabulary will increase. So that helps improve vocabulary. And then the third tip I typically give with individuals is use the English language more. So if you struggle with English, speak in English in the context where you would prefer to speak in isiXhosa, Sesotho, Setswana, whatever your language is. Try and use English in those contexts. Now, this introduces different complexities because all of a sudden, if I come to my friends and they're like, sharp browser, and I'm like, how's it works? They're going to be like, and then? But this is what you need to push against because you're becoming someone new. If you do it with a group of friends, then hopefully those group of friends should be people that care about you and your growth and your development. Just socialize it with them. Guys, girls, gents, friends, I'm trying to improve my ability to speak the English language. And as a result, I'll be having most of my conversations and I'll be responding mostly in English. Please support me in this. Maybe they'll ridicule a bit, but if these are people that care for you, they'll say, yeah, not a problem. What can I do to support? And then you can even send all of your voice notes in English. Now, if you don't trust your ability to speak the English language, the reality is you're going to be significantly more uncomfortable doing this, but get yourself to do it if you want to be able to speak the English language. And you'll find that the minute you get a grasp of English, then you'll be more comfortable expressing yourself in it. But if those fundamental communication skills are not there, you'll then also get to struggle. Because what happens is we think that knowing how to speak English is all of a sudden going to give us the ability to express certain things. Whereas the reality is knowing English is just a competency like any other competency. And by the way, there's a comment that's very prevalent on my social media platforms. People say, yeah, the problem with you don't understand us who went to these yellow t-shirt schools. And these yellow t-shirt schools are supposedly non-Model C schools. right? And I can see how that comparison gets made and how different schools wear different t-shirts. And to those yellow t-shirt people, you can learn the English language. The only advantage that a non-yellow t-shirt person has versus a yellow t-shirt person has is just they were exposed to the English language as a communicative practice on a daily basis. When I went to the school I went to, I didn't have any other choice but to speak English because most of the people that are around me were non-Xhosa speaking, or they were English or Afrikaans speaking. So that was the language where we met each other at. And I actually didn't have the opportunity or the flexibility to say, I'm not going to speak it. I had to break it because it was my only means to communicate. And that forced me to learn it. So when I would say, yeah, John, what we need to do was not this, he'd say, no, it's not was, it's is. He'll maybe chuckle about it. Yes, a bruised ego, but now I know from today onwards, it's is, it's not was. And the more you break it, the better you get at it. But people don't want to break it because they think, it's so embarrassing to break English. People will laugh at you. And you then need to weigh out the pain. Is it more painful to break it and be laughed at and know what it is the next time? Or is it more painful to not be able to express yourself for the rest of your life? When I look at it, this is the lesser of the two pains. And you just need to pick one.
I think it's the same problem that I've observed people have with technology. People are scared to break things. So let's not use these tools. They have so many amazing tools, at their disposal, but because they're always afraid to break things, they deny themselves of the benefit of those tools. Those are really powerful reflections, Thabani. But maybe one question I have is, should people be even carrying that burden? When you visit different countries, people are, communicating in German, trying to learn German right now. I actually feel more foolish speaking German than I worry about English, right?
Yeah.
So the world is changing. Even these colonial structures that used to define us and define interactions in offices and, different spaces, that's slowly disappearing. Should people be even worrying about this? And I'm saying this because it was last week I had a meeting with my team, and so we have someone new in the team, and I've always encountered them within, communicating English. And so I then said, Mr. So-and-so, you are actually Tsonga, and I would love to learn Tsonga. May we please just conduct this one meeting in Tsonga?
Wow.
And I'm telling you now, the person that I encountered, the intelligence, the authority, and just even the personality that they exhibited in their own language. I'm like, why do we have to deny ourselves of that diversity? Because it's so important when people bring their true self. When you have to constantly balance yourself out between this, my thought process is in Tsonga, and I have to try and adapt it in English, and it's not making sense, or it's not coming out the way I would like it to, right? I think what I decided was, let's rotate, because I would love to learn all the languages. I can hear Tsonga, but I struggle with speaking Tsonga. And I think my struggle is deeply rooted in the same challenges that people have with English. I know the words. I know how they should follow each other and how you can conjure them up. But because I feel I'll just say this one wrong thing and they laugh at me. So I sort of hold back. But that meeting forced me to engage in Tsonga. And I was like, I'm actually not bad, right? But the question is, should we even be placing that burden upon ourselves? And I like what the Afrikaans, community is violently fighting, say, our language is disappearing. Very soon enough, it would be extinct. We can't afford that. Whether we agree about the political stuff or not, but that's very true. At the essence, the depth and the richness of our cultures embedded in the language that we speak and communicate in is slowly disappearing in favor of a foreign language that is actually foreign to all of us. Right? Should we be placing that burden? Is it something that should even be a consideration, or we should look at how do I communicate more effectively in the way I know how. If you have to mix English and Zulu and Sotho and Tsonga and people can hear you, then comfortably communicate 100%. And engage in that manner.
100%. Yep. And I agree with you in that it is, and that's typically the journey that someone would follow. So someone will go and come into the course saying, I need to improve my English. And I'll say, no, you need to improve your communication style or your communication skills. They'll build the communication skills. And then on the other side of it, the English would have improved, sure, a little bit, but their communication skills drastically so. And English naturally becomes less of a concern because they realize that it's actually not about the English. And the reality is, it's not about the language. It's not about the language at all. It's not about you perfecting it and you getting to the root of it. And I love the approach that you're bringing about saying, embrace the languages that you have. As a matter of fact, if I were to take stock of the meetings that I sit in and the people that I meet and the people that I engage with, for most of my working day, most of them are native African language speakers. And I'm able to engage in that language. It's typically when there's a big forum, like 30, 40 people that English is used. And what I say then in that context is you don't even need that much English. Like you genuinely don't need that much English. And what the example that I typically make, and I like the fact that you made the Afrikaans example, is I'll typically meet people who speak Afrikaans and their English is not good. They'll switch up their is and they are, I are concerned, Thabani. And they will say it with authority and comfort. Yep. And I don't sit there and think, this person is incompetent because of the way they speak. Now, it would be careless of me to not acknowledge and put to the fore the historic connotations of it. Mm-hmm. There is the prevalent view. And I even want to make it less of a view and make it a reality that the degree to which, or the English you speak, can sometimes give you more competence than you actually have, or people are allowed to, or people tend to give you the benefit of the doubt. And I've seen this in various aspects of society. So I know that if I say, hey, how are you? This is Thabani here. I know that someone's going to hear the accent and they'll attribute more credibility to me exclusively based on my accent and how I speak English and my ability to speak the English language. And when to close the loop there, but that only lasts for so long. That level of, let's say, competence that you're ascribed or you're given as a result of having that accent or speaking English in a particular way, it's so short-lived because after you speak for a long time, people start clocking the actual competence. The same goes on the opposite way. If you don't know how to speak English, and you push through it and you consistently share your ideas, this is what you're thinking. Mix your language. Even say, I'm trying to say, ilanduka, like computer, and mix things. People get it. And after a while, people realize that, oh, this person is brilliant. This is where the gap is. And that gap is so, especially if your core role is not to speak the English language. If you're teaching English, maybe it's important for you to know how to speak English. But if you're in tech, if you're in business, if your ability to speak high level or very good English is actually not a blocker as much as you think it is. So the more you push through, I think about examples of people that come from France. I'm like, you guys can't speak English. But because they know that this is what the essence of what I'm here to communicate is. Again, notwithstanding the cultural background there, but I think communicate in the language you're most comfortable in, and you'll be shocked, as you're saying, at how competent you are. And also, you'd also be shocked at how well people get what you're trying to say. Because in my view, and I don't have any academic research to back this, I think we use more words than we should. This is how I started understanding Afrikaans. I would catch keywords, a word here, a word there, and I get the whole sentiment, but let's say someone uses 50 words. I just need 4 of those. I'm like, I get the gist of what you're trying to say.
Yep.
Because the majority of communication actually is nonverbal. So if I say, so what I'm trying to say is, when there's a person here and umuntu tries to tap that person on the shoulder, I'd like, be confused, but then even if you don't understand this Xhosa, you can see my facial expressions, the positioning where I'm putting people. You can see I say tap. So it's the only words you needed was person and tap, and the rest of it was nonverbal. Mm. So of the multiple words I've said, you've only needed 2 of them to understand what's being said. So if you take that view that I actually don't need the whole dictionary, I just need 2 or 3.
What's so important? I had an experience recently. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So I met a neighbor of mine. So I saw her once, and I greeted, and there was no response. That's because she was far. And this time I meet her and we are much closer to each other. And she basically explained, this is what I got from the conversation. I can see that you're always trying to be kind and polite every time you see me, but just know that I cannot speak. I'm mute.
Wow.
I generally cannot speak, but I can hear you. So nice to meet you, and bye. This is where I stay. Bye. I got that. There were no words shared.
Getting goosebumps.
But I got the message, and she communicated 100%. And it had nothing to do with words. And the second time, this is now my stupidity. The second time, I am now communicating with her, but I'm not speaking to her anymore. I'm now doing all these foolish things because, and I'm telling you, I've never judged myself as much as I did that. I'm like, what were you doing?
Yeah.
But I was so captured by just the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
No words shared, no words spoken, but I got the message. It was loud and very clear.
100%.
So I agree with you. I think we use a lot of words.
Too many.
Yeah.
Especially in the English language. It's too many. Well, I think in all languages.
Yeah.
And there's also what you're saying now reminds me of something someone said. They said, when someone doesn't, and we'll tend to do this, I do that, I catch myself doing this sometimes. When someone is not so good at English, when I speak with them, I'll speak like this. And I'll say, and I'll repeat things. Then I'll start speaking broken English because I want them, understand,
yeah.
Get. Yes.
Yeah.
And someone said, it's crazy that we do that because this person said they can't speak English well. So they won't be able to respond well. But then we think, and look, part of it is us trying to be empathetic and trying to connect in a different way. But also we don't realize that we do something to the interaction because they've seen you interact differently, and now you're doing this weird thing where I got caught with that. There was I was in India, and you need to haggle for everything there. And English is not a good language for them. And I caught myself doing exactly that, like this, bye, 10. And then a friend of mine was like,
what are you doing?
Why are you repeating words? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, snap.
Yeah.
No, let me just speak. And then they'll say, and they do say, like, don't understand. And then the non-verbals just come to the fore. And I left there feeling like, I get it.
Yeah.
I don't need to speak English. I can understand. There are a few keywords. I can point to the thing I want to buy. And then they can say, how much? Their money. And then I can say 10, 20. Then they say, no, show me more. Do you know what I mean? It's like so
yeah.
I absolutely love your example with we actually don't need words.
No, we don't. Well, Thabani, parting shot for the journey?
For me, the parting shot would be forever the things you think to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself need to be studied by yourself. I'm not saying publish it so everyone can study it, but that's where it starts. And be mindful of what you're calling yourself in those moments. And if you run those through a thing like those 12 thinking errors, you'll realize how untrue all of those are. So things like, I always say the wrong thing. I always say something stupid. I always forget my words. Anything that has to do with always, it can't be true. So first look at the things you identify with, and then see how those are stopping you from being the person you want to be. If there's someone you want to be confident, you want to be comfortable, you want your brilliance to show, you want your technical ability to show, you want your intellect to be showcased. This is where you want to be. This is where you are. Find the things that are stopping you from getting there. And one by one, break and attack those things. If you're saying, I can't be this thing, and maybe this is a very good exercise, list it out. Let's say you say, I want to be confident. I want to be the person that people go to. I want to express my ideas whenever I've got thoughts. I want to push back when I've got a pushback, when I want to disagree with someone. I want to disagree. Then you say, I can't be this person because, list that out. Because my English is not good. And then branch out with the English. How can I get my English to be good? There's steps. And then when am I going to take those steps so that my English can be good, so that I can be the person who's able to disagree? You scratch one thing out. The second thing is, I can't be this confident person who pushes back because I care too much what people think of me. Again, why is that? And whenever people say that they care too much of what people think of them, it's typically 5 to 7 people in their life, that either from childhood or from their current reality. And if you know who those people are and you can name those people, it's my dad, it's my 3rd grade teacher, it's my boss, it's my supervisor, it's my cousin's brother who always has something to say about everyone. You list those people and then you ask yourself the practical question. Does what those people say, think, or do matter more than the person I want to become? Yeah. Hopefully that's no. The answer to that question is no. And if it's yes, then go to therapy, go take care of it. But if it's no, then what do I do to show up as that person? The parting shot is people must be as practical as possible, Noxy, because for me, I'm starting to realize more and more that you design your life. And you're only going to get to where you need to be by actually doing the admin to get you to where you're going to need to be. Nothing new introduced into your life is going to make you feel the way you want to feel. It's going to make you be the person you want to be. You need to unlock those things. And as a result, those new things will come into a space where it's unlocked. Yeah. I've unfortunately been in the position where I'm coaching individuals and I realize that communication is not the issue here. Maybe in their home language, they've got spunk, they've got personality, they're playful. I'm like, communication is not the issue. How you see yourself is.
Just open an English class.
I'm scared to do that. I'm like, how you see yourself is. And how you see yourself is probably the thing that's going to open up the most opportunities for you. It's also the thing that could possibly block the most opportunities for you. We typically get in our own way. And the sooner you can get out of your way, the better.
Awesome. I had some intrusive thought that got the worst of me as you were explaining the last part. Basically saying the more you speak down on yourself and your ability to become, whatever that you have to become or you are supposed to become, the more you create pathways and avenues for people like us to earn revenue, because every time
100%.
you can't, then you need a coach, you need pills, you need a pharmacist. So it's in your benefit that you really get into the habit of doing the inner work and getting rid of the limiting beliefs and just being comfortable that everything is a journey. Instead of saying, I am stupid, just say, what happened today was not a good reflection of me. I believe I can learn and become better.
Yeah.
Does it mean that what happened was not stupid? Yes. But it doesn't have to define you and your ability to move past the experience. So thank you, Thabani.
It's only a pleasure.
For sharing such deep messages and strategies for us to communicate better, and also just going into your depth to communicate, because I can imagine that you are able to articulate some of these concepts because you've had to do work.
It was imperative.
I can dismiss some of your theories and some of your strategies and some of your views. So it takes a lot of courage for you to be able to share, knowing that you can be contradicted and dismissed, and every other approach that someone can take when they listen to what you have to say. So I appreciate your sharing honestly, vibrantly, dynamically, and I look forward to the next session.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Thank you.